share a little bit of word. Vernal has given me about 15-30 minutes, he said. So let's see how it goes.
Come on, are you excited?
Yeah, about the word.
Let's get excited for the word. Amen.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous also. So till I get in. Okay. So last time I shared about familiarity, right? Yeah. So how many of you all were there that day? Okay. And I'm going to I'm going to continue from that same place of familiarity, okay? And just when I was sitting here and I was worshiping, I remembered of a story one priest had told when I was going for catechism classes, okay? So I think I just want to tell you that story here. He said that in the church that there was another priest in the story who was the priest of a church. And every Sunday he used to preach a sermon, okay? So he started, the first Sunday he preached the sermon, everyone was very excited. He got a lot of compliments and, people were very excited about the sermon. Then the next Sunday when the people came, he spoke the same thing again. So people were like, okay, fine, same thing. The third Sunday also he started speaking the same thing again. Then people were bored. The following Sunday, he was speaking the same thing again and people were like literally angry and upset and irritated. So the following Sunday when the people came, there was somebody who went to the priest and told him that please don't preach that same sermon that you've been preaching for so many Sundays. So the priest apparently asked him, what was it that I preached? Can you just tell me? And this man couldn't respond. He just did not know what it was. Okay, so right there we see familiarity. We just get upset, right? The people that were just angry, they really did not capture the message that was being spoken, but they were so upset, they were so angry, and right there we see familiarity. Because they were so familiar with the sermon, they were so familiar with the priest, they lost the message. Okay, so if y'all think I'm preaching the same thing, please check your hearts. Okay? So, last time I started by saying familiarity is that thing that robs us of our blessings, okay? It is when familiarity steps in, we are not able to receive from God, okay? Not only God, but even from people around us, okay? So I hope I can put it in steps for us, okay? We're going to go right into Mark chapter 6, verse 1 to 5. Okay, we all know about that parable or that story of the life of Jesus. Mark chapter 6, verse 1 to 5. Okay, then it says, then he went out from there and came to his own country, and his disciples followed him. And when the Sabbath had come, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many hearing him were astonished, saying, where did this man get these things? And what wisdom is this which is given to him, that such mighty works are performed in his hands? Is this not the carpenter, the son of Mary, and brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us? And so they were offended with him. Remember the story that I just said? The people were offended with the priest because he was repeating the same sermon for a series of Sundays. So here we see the same people were again offended with Jesus. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own country, among his own relatives, and in his own house. Now he could not do, okay, just listen to this. It says, now he could not do mighty works there except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. Can you believe Jesus, who otherwise would bring dead men back to life, could not work a miracle? Why couldn't he do that? He couldn't do that just because people were familiar with him. And what happens? When comes familiarity, comes lack of faith. And when there is lack of faith, there is no place. We are not creating, or we are coming against the environment of miracles. Miracles do not happen when there is familiarity. Okay? Just before that, we see familiarity also brings offense. Okay, and offense is another thing that does not let us walk in the wholeness that God has for us. So we need to really look into our hearts. every now and then to see how we are getting familiar with things. It is not about, familiarity is not about just being familiar with Jesus. It's not about only in religion. It happens in our day-to-day life. Okay? We need to, sometimes we get, so many times we find ourselves saying like, I guess Vadan change. The fellow is talking the same thing again and again, same thing repeating himself. What is that? That comes from a place of being very familiar with the person. Familiarity is not bad. It's not, here we need to understand there is nothing that is bad or good. Okay? It is the extremes of it which makes it good. Being familiar with a person also helps us to understand the person better, helps us to, there are so many good things to familiarity, but here we are talking in the negative sense of it. Okay, familiarity, like how we saw in the scripture and the story, familiarity brings in offense. Familiarity puts off faith. And when there is no faith, even Jesus could not work miracles. And here, what we see was Nazareth was the place where Jesus was born and brought up, right? These are the same people, like I said last time, these are the same people who saw Jesus growing up. They saw Jesus in his natural, not as the one who was performing miracles and being able to, and not the one who was preaching a stronghold, like a headhold, like a mighty message. Okay, he was somebody they saw him in his day-to-day life, just doing his very normal things. Maybe getting up in the morning, being a carpenter's son, helping his father, spending time with the neighbors. They must have seen him in his good and his bad. Okay, we know that Jesus had anger, right? We saw him getting angry. So I'm sure he must have been getting angry there. So these are the people who saw Jesus in his day-to-day life. So they were so familiar with him that they were like, how can this fellow preach this message? From where does he get this wisdom? Right? And they could not draw from Jesus. They could not draw the miracle that Jesus could bring for them on that day. And then we see that the Bible is very clear. It says that there were no miracles. Jesus could not perform miracles. Mind you, Jesus himself could not perform miracles in that situation. Okay? So how much more we need to be careful in our day-to-day lives. If Jesus himself could not perform miracles there when he was right in the body, how much more we need to see and check our hearts, how many times we get familiar and how many times we miss our blessings and we miss our opportunity of receiving miracles by just being familiar in our day-to-day life. There is another scripture, and maybe we will not go through it, but in Numbers 12, okay, I'll just tell you the story. Numbers 12 is the story of Aaron and Miriam. Yeah, Aaron and Miriam were the brothers and sisters of Moses, right? And in that story, they say that, Moses had apparently married some woman who they were not happy with. And both Aaron and Miriam, they were backbiting and gossiping about Moses. Okay? So one of them says, what does he think? Okay, I'm just saying it in my words, but that is what it means. It's what does he think? Is God only talking to him? Can't he talk to us? Right? Brother and sister, right? What happens? They're familiar. Like they again have seen his brother in day-to-day life. So many times he was afraid. So many times he ran away, not wanting to do, running away from his purpose. This side. Edwin just, yeah. Okay. So what happened here? So here we see again Aaron and Miriam. Again, and then as the story progresses, it says that God was so angry with them that Miriam caught hold of some sickness, and then Moses prayed to God and she was healed. So again in the story, what we see is, again, there is familiarity, right? So what they say is does God only speak to him? He can speak even to us. So here we see that these people are familiar to the man of God, are familiar to the man of that community. And again, which keeps them away from their blessing. So we again need to keep a check on our hearts of how we do not get familiar with authority in our lives. And I would like to say authority, and I don't want to make it look very spiritual and very religion based. Okay, we all have authority in different phases, in different walks of our life. Sunday we come to church, we belong to a church community, we have authority, we have somebody who is in authority over us. In our homes, in our families, we have a person of authority over us. We go back to our workplaces, in our businesses, we have a person of authority. We need to make sure and we need to ensure that familiarity doesn't set in there. Okay? We need to remember one thing, that God could even speak, God chose to even speak to men through an donkey. Right? So God can speak to us through anybody. So we need to check, first thing, we need to ensure that we do not get familiar with the man of God or whoever in authority. I just want to say whoever in authority over your lives. In different phases of your lives, there will be different people who are placed by God as that voice of authority over your lives. And you need to ensure that every day you approach these people with a sense of newness. Okay, do not be familiar. You may see these people in their weaknesses. You may see these people in their failures. But that's another thing. That's between them and their God. Okay, but when this person stands as an authority over your life, they deserve the value, they deserve the honor, they deserve whatever honor that you ought to give them, because God speaks through the person of authority in your life. It can be in any place that you are in. It can be in your colleges, it is your teachers, your professors, your principals, people in office, it is your bosses. You know, you tend to get, I know this. I mean, today when I was just pondering, I was guilty of it, because you tend to get familiar, right? You tend to see them in their weaknesses, because we see them day-to-day life. We see them handling issues. We see them failing. We see them, doing mistakes. We see them like actually failing, and we tend to judge them because of their failures. Like, for example, Moses married, God was very clear that he shouldn't marry certain people. And here Moses goes and marries the very same people God says that he shouldn't marry. And what happened was his brothers and sisters were accusing him of his failure. But God was not pleased with that. And if you can go and read that, God was not pleased with Aaron and Miriam, and there was a sickness that came upon one of them. So we need to really look into our hearts and be very cautious of how we do not let familiarity or judging or people for their failure, especially I'm talking about authority over our lives. They deserve the honor irrespective of what they do. That is their problem. But if they are set as a voice of authority over our lives, they deserve to be honored. Yes? There's another story that talks about in Numbers chapter 14. Okay, this is the account where Moses asked the 12 tribes, the 12 leaders of the 12 tribes to go and spy the land of Canaan. Anybody knows it or nobody knows about it? You know? Everyone? Carol is looking blank. Okay, Carol, you can go and read Numbers 14, okay? But we know before the Israelites, okay, could walk into their promised land, Moses asks them to go and spy the land, and there were 12 men from the 12 different tribes who go and spy the land. Okay? Out of these 12 men that go, there were 10 of them who were complaining, and there were 2 of them who had a good report, who came with a good report, and there were 10 of them who were complaining about everything. Okay, before that, just to talk a little about Israelites. Israelites also, we know about Israelites, right? They are these people who had seen miracles happening left, right, center in their lives. Correct? Left, right, center. They right from the 12 plagues to the sea parting ways, and different miracles in the wilderness. They are the people who literally lived and breathed miracles every moment of their lives, right? They had what is that? Mana, right? So if they had miracles left, right, center happening in their lives, right? But and these people were so familiar with God, right? That the smallest issue that came, they would start complaining and they would start grumbling, and they would arouse God's anger and wrath. Yeah. And that thing continued with this 12 men who went. There were 10 of them who were complaining, and then God was so angry with their complaining and grumbling. And he says that, these are the people who have seen my hand work like anything, but yet they have never valued everything that I have done. And because of which, there were all those people who were complaining did not see the promised land. There were just a handful who actually saw the promised land. So what am I trying to infer from here? When you get familiar, there comes a lot of grumbling, there comes a lot of complaining, because of which many a times we miss our promises. Familiarity will cause us to miss our promises. So many of us have so many promises over our life, but we would really see that those promises have not come into fulfillment. We are still struggling there, and we need to look. And I want to say this without any condemnation, okay? I want to say that we really need to look into our hearts and see whether there is any kind of familiarity, whether it has set in, which does not let us receive the fullness that God has for us. Okay? To be able, we always, like I said last time, we need to always be expectant. We need to always come afresh. Every time we get up in the morning, we need to have a sense of expectation that today is a good day. How many times we just go into the day because we have to, because it is routine. We just get up and just go into the day, right? Do we really expect something good? Do we expect that something will be different today? We don't. We just go. It's just autopilot mode on. Right? What is that? It's only when you are sick on your bed and when the doctor has a bad report, you realize, wish I had done life differently. Why does that happen? It is because we are so familiar. We are not grateful for a new day. The Bible says in Lamentation that God's mercies are new every morning. What does that mean, guys, if you will just think over it? God is new every morning. What happened yesterday, what happened over the past doesn't matter. Today He is new. Today His goodness, His mercy, His desire to bless you, His need to bless you is new. What you've done over yesterday doesn't matter to Him. If you're only going to receive, if you're only willing to receive. In the life of Israel, God wanted to give them a land that was flowing with milk and honey. He said that you will live in houses that you did not build. You will live in cities that you did not do anything for. You will eat of trees that you did not grow. That is the heart of God for us. But they did not receive it because of their condition of their heart. How many times, today when I was getting ready, I was thinking, when we come to a place like this, do we just come because we have to come? Or do we come with a sense like, I get to come. I get to worship God. I get to hear His word. What is my thought? What am I thinking? Am I thinking like, okay, another Sunday I have to go. If I don't go, then I'm breaking some commandment and God will be angry. So let me go. Is that what we are thinking? Or can we come and saying that, I get to come into His presence as a community, because there's something different that happens when we come together. The Bible is clear. It says, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am present. The very fact that we have gathered here in His name, He is present. Whether you feel it or whether I feel it or not is secondary. But He is present here, guys. So can we come, or Are we coming in saying that, I get to come in His presence. I get to listen to His word, a fresh revelation of His word. I get to worship Him. Is that what I am thinking? I get to serve God, I get to put the camera for God. I get to do it for Him. We really need to see how our hearts are placed. And I don't mean to say this with any sort of condemnation, but just that we can live life intentionally, so that we can live every moment as though it's the only moment, as though it's a new moment. Yeah? Being very intentional, being very expectant that God will do something. When I come on a Sunday service, can I come like, today something is going to happen. Today my life is going to be transformed. Something is going to be new. And whether I feel it or not, doesn't matter. I'm still going to worship this God who died for me on the cross. Yeah, can we come with, just imagine when we live life like this. Just imagine when we come here like that, what is it going to be? We can't afford to live life the way the people in the past, like these instances that I've shared with you, has lived. It's going to be the same thing. History will just be repeating, but we are here to rewrite history in a new way. Yeah? So we really, really need to look at our hearts and see how much familiarity is there, and peel it off layers by layers, layers by layers, till we can come being very sensitive to Him. The very fact that we are not sensitive to Him here. Like the Bible is clear. It says that where 2 or 3 are gathered, there I am present. He is present here, whether you see Him, whether you feel Him or no. But why can't we feel Him? Because our hearts are not sensitive. And why they are not sensitive? It's because there is familiarity. How many of us, the very first time you encountered God, you remember that moment? Like the other day also I was talking about that same moment. It used to be so different. It used to be so different. I used to long to go to those 3 days, 9 to 6 services, just because I used to get to experience Him. Mind you, 9 to 6, Friday, I think Saturday, Sunday, I used to wait for that. We used to ride from Margaon to Panjim at midnight. We used to do that. Why? For God. Because that sensitive was our heart at that time. And just longing to experience His presence. And somewhere along the way, it went off. But I think it is time to bring that back again. It's time to bring that back again. To be once again sensitive. Just know that He is there. Just know that He is there. And everything that we do, everything, right from our fasting, right from our reading the Bible, right from the time we come here to worship, everything that we do, how mundane it looks, doesn't really matter. Even if it means sweeping the floor, can we be like, I'm doing it for that Jesus of mine? If we have that kind of a thought, nobody will have to tell anybody what to do. Right now, everyone has to be pushed. We have to push ourselves. I mean, everybody has to be pushed to do something, right? But the minute we have that thought, everything changes. The way we do life, the way we do church, the way we worship, everything changes. If we're able to let familiarity, rip off familiarity layer by layer. And I really hope that this is not just going to be a one-day message, but I can see everyone is like, I'm feeling like I'm doing a good job, because I really see everyone is reflecting deep. But I really hope that it's not just going to be just limited to today. If we want to progress, and if we want to have our relationship with God getting deeper, one thing we need to look for is familiarity. And if we want to see blessings, and if we want to live in the realm of miracles, we need to make sure that we've taken care of familiarity. Because it's very clear in the scriptures that I've told you. Jesus himself could not work miracles. He could not work miracles. What would anybody else do here if he could not work? It's just not possible to work a miracle if you are familiar. So if you want to live a life of miracles, if you want to live a supernatural life, if you want to see breakthroughs and being in that flow, you need to see your heart. And you need to remove all these weeds of familiarity so that we're continuously walking in that. And how to do it? How? We in the Bible we've heard, right? And we've read it like, fear the Lord. Yeah? What is the meaning of fear the Lord? Like, be scared of him? There you go. Be scared of him? It's being in awe of him. Just knowing that he's so big, he's so mighty. Our mind, just this nut-sized mind, cannot fully fathom how big this God is. And we can never fully experience God's love in one. We can never say that I've experienced enough of God's love. God's love is just never enough. In one of the letters, Paul says that God's love is high, deep, vast. It's beyond our understanding. We can never fully understand God's love. And so always being in awe of him. We will never fully understand God himself. God is progressive. He is big, he is mighty, we just can't wrap our head around him. We just can't wrap our head around him. And there is so much more in him. So why we become familiar of God? Because we've had an encounter, we've had an experience, and then we think like, that's it. There's nothing more. And that is where we start getting bored, and then comes the familiarity. But we need to understand that God is big. He's mighty. We just can't wrap our head around him. So that is what, always being in awe of God, not being fearful of him. The Bible talks in so many places, fear the Lord, fear the Lord. The fear is being in awe of him, just holding him in awe and knowing that he is so much bigger than what I understand. And what I've experienced him so far is never going to be enough. He always has more to give. That's one way. Second way is being expectant all the time that there is something more. Constantly being expectant, constantly being new. Always approaching God like as if he is new. He's not the same old one. There's something new about him now, and there is something new about him the next moment. There'll be something new about him the next time. So constantly being expectant. And the third thing, and which is the most important thing, is gratitude. Having a sense of gratitude all the time. And that is our biggest failure. And we see that is the biggest failure in the life of the Israelites. They're the people who had seen miracles like anybody else. But where they failed was they were never grateful enough. They were constantly complaining and bickering about God, They were constantly complaining to Moses. Like, what they said, right? If you couldn't do this, why did you bring us out? In Egypt, we would have been eating cucumbers and this and that and that. But here God was breaking stones and giving them fresh water. He was raining down manna for them every day. He killed, all the people that were troubling them. We know that they swept by the river, but they walked on dry land. There was so much that God did for them, but yet they could not hold gratitude. And if you lack gratitude, you will always end up being familiar and not being able to be in awe of God. So, very important things is to be in awe of him all the time. Know that he is new. Know that he is good. Okay, constantly seeking him more and more, because God is inexhaustible. He can always give us a new encounter every time we come in his presence. He always has something new. And every time an encounter need not be something very dramatic. It can just be that still feeling in your heart, And sometimes we don't acknowledge this because we are not, it comes from that same place of not being able to hold him in honor, not being able to hold him in awe, not being grateful enough. And when I'm saying this thing, I also want to say that the same thing is applicable to our day-to-day life. Yeah, we are talking about God, but I want to also say about the authority that we have in our life, because authority that we have in every area is a representation of God in our lives. So constantly being in that place of gratitude, being in that place of awe, being expectant that something new, something good is coming every moment. Yes? So this is my message, and I hope it's going to change lives for us. Thank you.
Come on, give Vanika a big hand. Awesome. Okay. Just want to speak a little bit more of what she's trying to say is, familiarity. She's talking about familiarity. Familiarity is insensitivity. Okay. So when you hear a joke for the first time, what do? You laugh. Second time, third time, you don't laugh. Why? Because you have now become insensitive to the joke. Right? Same thing happens in church, in spirituality. Are you with me? Okay. What happens is, oh wow, miracle happened, healing happened, And then if you keep seeing the same miracles, you get familiar. You become insensitive to it. And that blocks your miracle and my miracle. Are you with me? That's what happened to the people of Israel. Every day they are seeing supernatural, crazy miracles. But still could not reach to the promised land. Why? Became insensitive. Are you with me? So we have, as humans, tendency to be insensitive to people in the church, insensitive to sermons, insensitive to the word, insensitive to God's presence, insensitive to the same worship song. Are you with me? We tend to be insensitive. Okay, it's another Sunday. So, what we need to do is, we need to stir the Spirit. That's what St. Paul says. I want you to stir the Spirit. Each time you come here in this place, I want you to understand that when you step into this place, it's a time to stir your spirit. Stir all your insensitivities and start being sensitive, expecting a miracle, the same miracle in a new way. Come on. Are you with me? Do you understand? There's a woman, 16 years, she was bleeding. 16 or 12, I don't know. 12, sorry. 12 years she was bleeding, and Jesus is passing by. Everyone is touching, jumping on Jesus, doing all kind of things. No one is getting healed. But this woman goes and touches the hem of the garment of Jesus, gets healed instantly. Why? Rest all the disciples, everyone have become familiar to Jesus. But this woman goes with an expectation. Are you with me? How many of you are here come with an expectation? Raise your hands. Don't tell me lies. Your expectation is what opens doors for your miracles. Are you with me? Your expectation in a new way. God is going to do something today. I'm going to go there and I'm going to come back with a miracle.